inspiring you to set the marketplace ablaze in partnership with an awesome and limitless God. This is the Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur Podcast, and this isn't business as usual. Here's your host and Chief Fire Igniter, Shay Bynes.
Welcome back to the Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur Podcast. This is your host, Shay Bynes, and our goal here is to inspire you to operate your business completely yielded and in partnership with our awesome and limitless God. My guest today is Bobby Albert, CEO and President of Values-Driven LLC. He has a passion for God, for people, and for building strong workplace cultures. Now, all of that comes across loud and clear in our conversation today, and I believe there is so much goodness to take from this chat. Frankly, when I have an opportunity to listen to someone like Bobby, I'm leaning in. He has been an entrepreneur for over 4 decades, and he has seen firsthand the beauty of not being primarily driven by bottom line financial results, but instead prioritizing transformation in the lives of people. But to be clear, his businesses have done quite well financially too. Bobby shares his story of growing in his faith. Plus, he shares so many great examples of how he took a kingdom-centered framework and applied it to his workplace culture. Listen in and enjoy this conversation with Bobby Albert. Bobby Albert, what's going on, sir?
Well, good day, and it's such a pleasure to be on your show.
Well, I've really been looking forward to this day because you and I had a nice get acquainted chat that I really thought was fun. And so I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to share in our conversation with the entire, KDE community today. So thanks for joining me. Now, I don't normally do this, but I feel compelled to share a little bit of your bio because I want to give people some context, and then I'm going to dig into some of your story. But I want people to understand. So Bobby is not a brand new entrepreneur. Bobby, I saw in your bio that you were like a lifelong entrepreneur. You have started 12 different businesses. You've acquired 9. You had a business that you sold to a publicly traded company back in 2011, but in the 6 years prior to that, it grew in revenues and profits by 500%. So you kind of been you've been in this game for a little bit. Like this is not, this isn't a brand new walk for you.
Yeah, just for a little while.
But what you're doing now with this whole thing around values-driven leadership, one of the things that really compelled me about your story as I was talking to you, and I know we'll explore that today, is how keen you've been. Well, you may not necessarily use this phrase, but as I was listening to your story, all I kept hearing is that Bobby established kingdom culture. He established kingdom culture in his business and the way he shows up with his employees, as well as the way he show up with customers and those that they touch in their sphere of influence. And because of the goodness of bringing just the goodness of who he is in the midst of that thing, you just continue to see increase. You saw kingdom multiplication. That is Shay Bynes' version of Bobby Albert's story.
That's pretty close.
Okay, so let's start because I know you're a lifelong entrepreneur. So give everybody some context. Like, how did you even get started in business? Talk to me a little bit about the early days and whether you in the early days had this revelation of doing business with God or whether you were just kind of out here and separated your work life from your spiritual life.
All right. Well, my father started an upholstery and furniture upholstery and refinishing business in 1938.
Wow.
And in the late 50s, and this is back in the days before, regular retail stores like we know, furniture retail stores like we know today, people would get almost all of their furniture reupholstered and refinished in the home. Well, it turned out many of them were also moving. And they were afraid the movers were going to tear everything up. And they started asking my dad, would you mind moving us as well? Well, him listening to his customers, he started a moving and storage company. And, I was one of those, young kids that was very fortunate to hang out with my dad a lot. And I mean, I knew who the bankers were, the people that handle our insurance, who repaired the trucks, and even back then, we even had full service gasoline stations, if you can imagine that. And so I even knew the people that put the gasoline in the trucks. And when I was 12 years old, because I was always, curious. And of course, I was a kid with high energy. I mean, you would have said I was ADDDDD, sometimes
all the
I'm
extra
that way.
D's.
Yeah, I'm kind of like that as an adult even, but is that, in fact, when I was even younger, before 12, when people's household goods came in the storage, back then, I'm embarrassed to tell you, but is that the moving van pads, or some people call them blankets, they never were clean. I mean, they were always filthy dirty. And my first job I got was to fold the pads. Now you got to realize I'm, very, very young, but I thought I had the best job in the world. And but when I was 12, my dad let me go out on my first moving job. Now that's pretty young. And but right before I went out with the crew, he gave me some wise advice that and he said, Bobby, when you go out there, I don't want you to act like the boss's son. Now I don't know how to explain it, but as a 12 years old, somehow I knew exactly what he meant. And so when I went out there on that moving job, I took on the servant leader's attitude. Now you got to realize I'm not a Christian yet, but my family did go to church, and I had heard something about serving the Lord, but but I would do the kind of work on the job that no one else liked doing, like folding the pads, because they were always so dirty. And I would run between the truck and the house, and the house and the truck, and I would take one break to everybody's two breaks.
Right.
And back then the crew, they would smoke, and I didn't smoke, so I always chewed gum, and they started calling it, I mean, for years afterwards, they started calling it the chewing gum break. And so, but I didn't realize how important this servant leader attitude that I took, how it impacted later on. And what had happened is that, when I was 20 years old, life was really good. I mean, real good. I just recently graduated from the local university. I became engaged to marry my wife. I was waiting to get into law school at the time. And so life was really good. But there is one evening that I'll never forget, and that is that I was playing foosball with my college buddies, and someone walked up to me and said, "Bobby, we got a phone call, and your dad's been taken to the emergency room." Well, boy, everyone, we all hopped in the car and we rushed on down to the emergency room. And soon as the double doors opened and I walked in, my mom was seated over here on the left. Well, she sees me and she stands up. And about that time, our long-term family doctor walked up to us, and he said, "I couldn't save him." Well, I tell you what, my mom and I were absolutely stunned. Absolutely stunned. And right then, I was thrust to become the leader of our small 5-employee family business. And one thing that I discovered shortly after that is that we were heavily in debt. Well, our debt was all short term. In other words, due less than 1 year.
Right.
But the other thing that was a challenge is that our total gross revenue was the same size as our debt that was due within 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
But somehow, by God's grace, and I still didn't understand all this then.
Because you still hadn't given your life to the Lord at this time.
No, I hadn't. And but we not only was able to start growing the business, we began to really start thriving, and the business grew to a point. When I sold the company, we had over 150 employees, and like you said, the few years leading up to the sale, we had during some of the toughest economic times. That is like I'm Jay,
I remember.
Might have even been impacted in late 07, 08,
Yes.
09, 2010, right. And a lot of other people were impacted.
Yes.
Even at that, we grew our revenue and profits over 500%.
Wow.
But I really contributed a lot to our culture. But
yes,
as this 20-year-old, I learned a lot real quick. Is one thing that the bank, actually my dad had 3 bankers, and I don't know why they were 3 bankers, but they all had different roles and things. But 2 of them wanted to shut me down, which you can probably make sense. I mean, here's this 20-year-old kid, and we owe them as much money as the total gross revenue. It didn't sound very good. And but one of them wanted to give me a chance. And somehow that banker convinced the other 2 to give me a chance. And we were very fortunate with a lot of people helping me. We grew the revenue that first year by 252%, and we had the highest profit in the history of the company.
Wow.
But there was some other things I had to do that was very challenging. One, I had to ask these 5 employees to take a pay cut.
Mm-hmm.
You can imagine, today, if the leader goes to the employee and say, I need everybody, I met with them one-on-one, but to take a pay cut, it's not going to be a happy day.
That's right.
And I tell you what, at 20 years old, when I was talking, I mean, these people taught me a lot about the business out there on the streets, you might say. Well, I mean, I was shaking, my lips were shaking. And, but you know what, Jay, what really surprised me is that I got 100% acceptance. And I was, because, I'm thinking of, these people are going to quit. What am I going to do, to hire? I was, everything was like, I couldn't see how this was going to work out, but I knew I needed to do it. And when I look back, I think a lot of the reason because they had a lot of respect for my dad. And it was because he really took care of the people. He really did.
So he already had that kind of culture there. Really, really solid workplace culture had already been created there. Yeah.
And, but, I never heard my dad say, he saw his work as a ministry. I didn't hear him say those things, but he really took care of his people. But the other thing is, going back from 12 years old, all the way through high school and even in college, I worked on the trucks. and alongside these people. And I also would go in on Saturday mornings and type all the documentation for the upcoming jobs for my dad. But so I kind of knew that side of the business. But is that I think all those years of taking on that servant leader attitude,
Yes.
I had learned their confidence and their respect as well, that we were going to make it.
Yes, you had a lot of relational equity.
Yes. Yeah, there was a lot of deposits made in that relationship bank account. And but one of the other things I was, to get some of the debt down, I sold my personal car. And so I one of the employees drove by. Well, my dad furnished vehicles to two of the employees. Well, I wasn't going to take those vehicles away because he's the one that, gave them to them to use. And so I asked one of those people that drove by my home to pick me up every day. And he took me home every evening.
Wow.
And he did it for about 2 years.
Wow.
And so in the early goings, there was just a lot of sacrifice made.
Yes, absolutely. But Bobby, when did your relationship with the Lord, like when did that shift happen in your life? How old were you?
Well, actually, I was 30 years old.
You were 30. So at that point, were you still running the furniture business?
Yeah, well, we did still have the furniture business, but about that same time, this is the entrepreneur spirit in me. Is I'm a visionary and an innovator. I started we call the business was called Cutting Corners. And what it was to sell bolts of fabric on the rack for customers to come in and select the fabrics they wanted off of a bolt. And we were able to reduce the cost of the fabric by 300%. So it immediately we almost tripled our upholstery and refinishing business.
Yeah.
And talking about being an entrepreneur spirit, one thing I can share with you is, I mentioned about the success we had within 1 year.
Yes.
Well, one of the things, this is this entrepreneur spirit. I started this. I lived in an apartment, and I was noticing some people were renting the apartment, were also renting furniture.
Yeah.
Well, they were renting it from some regional furniture rental company. And so I started thinking, we have trucks, we have warehouses, we have, people. And this business of renting furniture was so new. It was like hardly anybody was doing it. But the people that was servicing it, they came out of a major city. They had to drive, some distance, and they were charging an arm and a leg. Well,
yeah.
I figured out how to do that and buy the furniture wholesale. And so we started a furniture rental company.
You just these ancillary businesses that are connected to something else you're doing where you can just continue to add more value.
Yeah. And so also when I was, around 30, this again, the entrepreneur spirit in me is I started a nationwide, moving relocation business. And that grew, so large that it was kind of like our bread and butter, until I sold the company.
Yeah.
We were relocating people from like California to Illinois, from Florida to Virginia, from the state of Washington, state of Connecticut. And originally it started out moving military personnel, and then it grew into consumer and corporate account business. And we also did international moving.
Okay. So now if this is happening around the time, so now you've given your life to the Lord around this time, and you're also starting all these businesses. You got all these things going on. Now, you said that you never heard your dad talk about, business as kind of ministry in terms of how he served, but he modeled service. Now, when you gave your life to the Lord and you have this entrepreneurial spirit, did you make the connection at age 30 that these things that I'm doing, like I can do this with God? I need to get into this Bible. I need to apply what I'm learning about who Jesus is and how he's modeled and show up in my business's way. Did you make that connection early on, or did it take a while?
It still took a while. Prior to September 1st of 1982, when I was 30.
Yeah.
At that time, I was one of those people that I knew a lot about God, but I didn't know God.
Yes, I understand.
And actually, because I grew up in the church, my mindset is to earn my way to heaven, not based on what I did, not what Jesus Christ did for me.
Right.
And so, but on that day is when I prayed to receive Jesus Christ as my personal Savior and the Lord and Master of my life. And that was the beginning of a process. But it wasn't until 1987. There was a couple of things that happened during that time. I started having a daily quiet time.
Yes.
And that was in the spring of 1987. And if I may share this, because I want to say it in an encouraging way.
Yeah.
And what I want to share, I'm not asking you or the audience to pat me on the back or congratulate me. But since that spring of 1987, I've never missed a daily quiet time except one time when I was traveling.
Yeah.
And so the Lord has, through his word, has been pouring into me and pouring into me and pouring into me.
Yes.
One of the other things that took place in that spring of 1987 is I started to see my work as a ministry and not a job. Well, it was kind of a weird start because it's like, okay, Lord, I've declared it. Now what?
Yes.
Well, at that time, I was teaching high school boys at my church. Most of the years, I did it for over 30 years, and most of the time was 12th grade boys. And the Bible study I was using one day, I was going, preparing for the Sunday coming up. And I was noticing, I said, man, adults need to hear this. This is really good stuff. So I started a weekly Bible study for employees. And I was shocked how many employees showed up. I just posted it up. It's all volunteer. And I was just really surprised. And that encouraged me to keep it going. And we had that all the way until I sold the company. But as the years went by, with me having to travel, a lot more because of our business growth. But we had over time, there was a lot of employees that could fill in for me. But I personally took, whenever I could, is to prepare for those Bible studies.
Yeah.
And one of the things, if I might share this, that happened in December of 87 is that I had one of the unique experience of God's word actually speaking to me. I was experiencing it, but this was very dramatic. And what had taken place is that I was faced with one of the biggest decisions in my whole life. And the deadline for that decision was fast approaching.
This was a business decision?
Well, actually, it was a personal decision.
Okay.
And so I, part of me being, ADDDD, I'm impatient, and all that. I mean, I wanted it done yesterday, but so my impatient nature wanted me to hurry up and make a decision.
Right.
Well, in my daily quiet time on Sunday, that morning is I was reading Psalms, and I came to Psalms 27, and then I came to the verse 14, and verse 14 said, "Now get this. See, I'm impatient here. I'm in a hurry. I mean, let's get it going."
Yes.
It said, "Be patient and wait on the Lord."
Yes.
Well, like I shared with you earlier, I think before this show, is that it really shook me.
Yeah.
I mean, I clearly knew the Lord was speaking to me.
Yes.
In fact, it scared me. And so I called and got in to talk to my pastor. And, he and I was sitting down and in his office, and I was sharing the story. I got to hurry up and get this decision made,
Yes.
because the deadline's approaching. And anyway, I needed to decide something.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, I hadn't even told him why I was there yet. He thought that I was there because I was looking for advice about the decision,
Yes.
Well, he put out his hand to pause me for a moment. And so I stopped, and he said, Psalms 27, verse 14 said, "Be patient and wait on the Lord." I mean, I'm getting chill bumps even telling you.
Uh-huh.
So
when the Lord speaks.
Yeah, well, of course, I started laughing,
Yes.
and he was wondering if he said something wrong, because I said, I told him, I said, well, that's the very reason why I'm here. I came here because in my quiet time, I read that verse.
Yes.
And I hadn't even told him that yet.
That's right. That was just one of those moments. The Holy Spirit's like, hey, we're going to make sure this comes fully alive.
Yeah.
For Bobby right now.
All right. It was like, okay, I left his office and I was thinking, all right, well, I know what I got to do. I got to tell him I'm going to pass on this decision.
Yeah.
Because I was kind of leaning to go with the decision.
Yeah.
And so I did. I knew they were going to get upset because they had invested a lot of time and energy in me. And they did. They got upset. They were, they didn't call me names or anything, but they were upset.
Yeah.
Well, the story didn't finish there.
Okay.
1 month later, I get a call, another call for another opportunity that was even bigger than the one that I was in a hurry to make a decision on.
Yes.
And that helped me understand that the Lord had bigger plans for me than, and that was the reason why his word really spoke to me.
Oh, that's so good. I just love those precious moments of where just like it comes so alive and it's so personal for us because it changes the trajectory of our lives. That's super good. I love that. Okay, so I'm going to fast forward you a little bit because I want to talk about this, something that you and I spoke about in our first time we chatted, which was what you would call probably a values-driven culture. And what I would say is an establishment of kingdom culture in your business. And I want you to share just some of the things, like when you embrace this, you talked about some of your starting points in terms of how, you were offering Bible study to employees, completely optional, but you shared some other stuff to me that I was just like, the way you showed up and the way God increased what you were doing, the way you were showing up for both employees, for customers, like all of that stuff. Talk to me about just some of those things that the Lord really put on your heart to do and to establish, to really create, this culture of love, or I don't know how else you would describe it. Just like, tell me what was on your heart and how that was expressed.
Okay. Well, let me just share this, if I may, kind of to start with this.
Yeah.
Is that I've learned over the years that many Christian business leaders, they live their lives still in a compartment. In other words, they haven't connected Sunday and Monday, and but because they think the only thing that's sacred they do is on Sunday. Well, actually, the Lord's everything is sacred to the Lord. So, and so what I was really our work as worship ministry that originally started out for employees.
Yeah.
And so it's one of the things I would like to leave with your audience today when they listen to this show is that I want to come beside them and help them build a culture where people thrive and profits soar, but to also encourage them to integrate the lordship of Jesus Christ into every area of their life, be it with their family, at their church, in the workplace, as well as in the marketplace.
Yeah.
And so if I may share this with you, is that the key verse that was a foundational verse for our company was Colossians 3:23 and 24. And what if I may kind of walk through that, because that kind of fits in. It was so foundation to our culture. And I would share this verse 4 times a year when we would have company-wide meetings. And starting with verse 23, it says, whatever you do. And to me, it's exactly what it says. Whatever you do, be it at work or at church or at a convenience store or walking through, Target or Walmart or out on a soccer field, even, with your children playing. It's whatever you do it with all of your heart. And to me, that means excellence is not a sometime thing. It's an all-time thing, as working for the Lord, not men. And our employees clearly understood that they came to work not for Bobby Albert, but to work for the Lord when they came to work every day. So they were coming to work for a higher purpose, even though I don't know who was a Christian or not. But the verse, it goes on and it says, since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward, and this final verse is a key verse here, it is the Lord Christ you are serving. So is that our employees knew that it was clear from me that they came to work to serve the Lord Jesus Christ every day and not Bobby Albert. And this kind of tied in with an organization chart, for years and years, like every organization, we even still had it, when I sold the company, we had a traditional organization chart, like with me at the top. And then, it breaks down between the leaders and the supervisors and, so forth, all the way to the front line. But we had it so people understood roles and responsibilities. But what I did, I took that organization chart and took it and turned it upside down. And this ties back to being the servant leader that I talked about earlier, is that I was at the bottom. And it was my responsibility to serve and equip and develop the leadership team. They knew that it was their responsibility to serve and equip and develop, directors and supervisors, and all the way up to the employees were at the top of the organization. But even more at the top of the organization, we had the customer, because, unless you got the customer, we don't have anything to do,
No business without customers.
That's right. But tying back to this verse, is at the top of that organization chart was also Jesus Christ, because he was our boss. And so having that in mind is that our work is worship ministry, and it grew so large within our company, we had to hire an extra person in our human resource department, or HR, just to handle all the logistics of our ministry.
Wow.
And we divided up that ministry between 4 areas. We call it mind, body, spirit, and emotions. Now, emotions wasn't like being emotional. What it was is helping people how to develop relationships. And like I mentioned earlier, the workplace was originally, it was for employees, but we finally learned how to minister to customers and suppliers. And if I may share maybe some examples, some
yes,
practical
please do.
examples. Let's take on the mind.
Okay.
In our business, it was seasonal. Most people relocated when school's out during the summer. It was like, that was our peak season. And the last week of June is always the peak of the peak, which is going to happen here soon. And we used to kid each other, who was going to cry first, because it's really, it's bad.
It's intense.
It is every year. It is every year. But anyway, during our mind, we were talking about developing training and development during the non-peak season. We would have just all kinds of, my strength was developing people, other people in the company. It was their strength on training, skills training and things. But we also provided educational assistance to the junior college and the university. And we also had what was called a mover skill rodeo. And once a year, we would pretty well shut down the company and for half a day. And the movers that worked on the moving trucks would compete in a rodeo.
Sounds fun.
Yeah. Well, and what it was, there were 5 events, and we used employees, administrative employees to help with the judging and all that. And then we'd have a big old luncheon, and we would give out prizes like to the top dog award, and all those kind of things. But then we go on to the body. And this is where we had a strong, extremely strong wellness program. We would bring in once or twice a year, either the hospital or one of the clinics to come and do simple things like blood testing and blood pressure check, cholesterol check, counseling on various health issues. And also once or twice a year, we had a weight loss program. It was a fun thing. We call it Move It and Lose It.
Move it and lose it.
Yeah, move it and lose it. And they'd be on a Friday, there'd be a weigh-in. And the people that would, made the best progress, they got prizes and all that kind of stuff. And then we would also provide gym memberships for people to pay for that, so they could, we're trying to help them keep healthy,
Yeah.
And then on the spiritual side, I already mentioned about the weekly Bible studies. We had the marketplace chaplains that would come in. Time I sold the company, we had 4 chaplains that were on call 24/7.
That's wonderful.
They they would do hospital visit, and this was for the whole family, not just the employee.
Right.
Hospital visits, weddings, funerals, no charge. And our employees, because this was so important to me, our employees clearly knew that they could stop their work to visit with a chaplain, whatever they want to talk. And by the way, probably the key to that, it's all kept confidential.
Yes.
And I mean, I didn't know, what anybody said anything to a chaplain. Out of all the years that we had their service, I never knew. And but also the chaplains knew, because we shared this with them. And I mean, in front of all the employees, the chaplains knew they could stop and visit with employees, as they're walking the workplace, and they would all do worksite visits once a week. And then we also had prayer teams to pray over, employee needs and things like that. And then we also paid all expenses for the women to attend a Women of Faith conference at their, choosing.
Yes.
And we would, my church had annually what was called a beast feast. It's kind of a man thing, and so we would, it was always surprising how many men signed up for that to attend, but it was it was always a strong message, but it was fun. They would get this, kind of tell you it's a man thing. They'd give away, some guns or a hunting trip and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
And this is, I don't even hear it anymore, but way back, used to be something called Promise Keepers for men.
Oh, yeah. I remember that.
And I would lead a group of men, several of them would go with me to attend the Promise Keepers. And we also, in my town, often we'd have, Christian concerts that would come in. We would buy a big set of tickets for employees for them. Often there'd be a financial and marriage enrichment workshop.
Yeah.
And we would pay for all the expenses to attend the workshop. And then when we get into the emotions, talking about helping people develop relationships, not only, I mean, we're still talking about here in the workplace right now, but we would have these Friday stand-up meetings. They would last only 5 or 10 minutes, and it was every Friday. It would kind of keep everybody up to date of what's going on and who's doing what. And Bobby is traveling to Washington, D.C., and, or something like that, or Bobby's going to go talk to this corporate client, or, it's something like that. And also during the summer, the peak season, we had what was called Happy Fridays. Now, man, I love these because it was stopping in the middle of an afternoon on Fridays, and not very long, but just long enough to kind of have some little bit of a fun. My favorite was always going outside, in Texas. That's where, if you can't tell where I'm from, in Texas. And we would go outside and have water gun fights. And, but I would also bring in a Dunkin' tank, and guess who got to sit in the Dunkin' tank? Bobby.
I bet that would be you.
Yeah, that'd be me. But we'd have
fun for you and fun for the ones who dunk you.
Yeah, exactly. But also people would give me their flavor they wanted, and I'd go and get everyone snow cones, or we would have set up for people to come in, and I would make them banana splits or a sundae, or something. So it was just a fun stuff.
But I love this because it's like you had a framework, it was like, okay, we want to deal with mind. We want to deal with body. We want to deal with spirit. We want to deal with people being able to develop well emotionally and to kind of serve in those areas. And then in that quadrant, it's like, how do we serve and how do we bring value to people who are in here as employees, as well as, customers? What does that look like? And the families of our employees, like what what does the fullness of that look like? So I love the way that played out. That's super good. I love that.
Yeah. That internally in the workplace, and if I comment in here in a moment about the marketplace dealing with customer and supplier.
Yes.
But the signal that was constantly being sent is that I care for you. I care for you. I care for you.
Yes.
And I think that had a huge impact on the performance of our employees. I didn't quite realize it. To me, I was just serving the Lord, ministering to people. But the more I look back on it is that the people clearly knew that they belonged there. They were wanted there. I learned that, instead of driving, focus on results is to focus on the people that gave me the results. And the people gave us extraordinary, the industry, their eyes would poke out if they really knew how large we were and how much profitability we had. But if I might share a couple more things on,
please go ahead,
on the emotion side. Is because all this is trying to develop relationship and teamwork, internally. Is that like in July, I bring in massage therapists to people would sign up for they come in for a couple of days. And then in August, I bring in 2 wrecked cars, give people sledgehammers. And then they would just beat the heck out of those cars. They'd be, I'm embarrassed to tell you, but, they'd be even a customer's name on the side of the car. Because, we had some customers that, I'm embarrassed to tell you, but some customers are just not nice.
There's some really, really tough ones. Yes.
Yeah. And but, look, we're in the moving business. Mainly that's our business. And we break things, we lose things, we don't show up when we say we're going to. We do a lot of things wrong.
Yeah.
We got it down pretty good, but
yes. But mistakes happen.
Yeah, some customers are just not nice people. And then in September, at the end of our peak season, I take everybody, shut down the whole company during lunch, and we have what called bowling and burgers. And it was a fun time to celebrate the summer work. And we'd have silly, real silly prizes like who had the biggest shoes, who had the loudest thump when their ball hit the alley, or the best gutter ball. It was all kinds of stuff like that. But
I am curious about one thing, because you showed up with, especially on the spirit side, right? You're showing up unapologetically Jesus-centered. And I'm curious to know, you have a bunch of different people with a bunch of faith backgrounds, and even different aspects of even within the Christian faith backgrounds. I'm curious to know whether were there ever any complications or difficult things you had to work through because of that variety? Like, did you ever run into any issues, or people just were like, hey, this is Bobby, this is how it works around here. If I'm not interested, whatever. Like, how did that flow?
Well, that's an excellent question. And I knew of a few people that they weren't Christians, or I just knew because they told me,
Right.
And I knew of some people that were a member of a denomination that I wouldn't consider, Christ-based.
Right.
But I would always, because we would always open meetings with prayer, and those kind of things. I would always go to those people before the meeting, and, they knew that it was going to happen every time. I'd say, look, hey, you're not going to we're not going to call you out. You're not going to embarrass me. I'm going to pray when we open up the meeting for, like a company-wide meeting. If you want to step out or just look another way, or,
right,
feel free to do that. And we're
so you gave them permission to flow the way they needed to in order to be comfortable in that environment. So it's almost like, so you just gave them freedom, and then therefore they can just go, you can disengage. Like you don't have to. Yeah. So it's up to you. But I'm giving you the space to do that so that you
that's
know,
right.
like, yeah. So that's just honor.
Well, we got better at in the interview process. You can't ask somebody if they're a Christian.
Right.
All right. But in the interview process, we got better at communicating to a prospective employee or potential employee that, hey, the CEO of this company is a real strong Christian, and he's pretty bold. And are you going to feel comfortable about that?
Right.
And they would also, push across the table. These are our core values. And at the bottom of the core values, it had that Colossians 3:23 and 24.
Yes.
And, we may not go all to this level in the initial interview, but if there were follow-up interviews.
Yeah.
And we actually had a few people say, I don't think I would.
Right. This is a bit too much for me.
this I don't think I would fit here. Well, that's okay. It doesn't mean they're bad people.
That's right. It's
just that they weren't ready, to hear these things.
Yes.
Or the Lord had other plans for them,
Yes. So you got to the point where you are expressing the company culture with people before they get to the point of needing to make the decision, so that then they're armed with that information in their decision-making process.
That's right.
Yeah. That's super good.
Yeah. So, but anyway, that's kind of how we dealt with some of those challenging things. And may I share about the marketplace?
Go ahead.
It took me a while to figure this out, but and when I mention marketplace, we include customers and suppliers. Now, to us, suppliers, we had about 3,000 suppliers. Now, we had the typical, someone to come in and work on computers or the copy machine or, that kind of stuff. But suppliers to us really might be like contractors, because we had so much business. We had these other moving companies all over the country and even internationally that because we had to engage these people to help us do these relocations.
Right.
And so, but what we did, we figured, because we communicated with customers, and not only verbally by phone, but also electronically, like a email or something like that. So we always provided a means to customers and suppliers. We always had in the email down at the bottom a place for them to submit prayer requests.
Oh, wow.
And so we had a prayer team. It was, and I was usually, part of that prayer team to pray over these requests. And it was really surprising how many requests we got. I don't know. I was just putting out an opportunity. I was just surprised. But, relocating, particularly across the country or even international, people are really stressed out.
Yes.
They got to think about, they're going to get it's a job change. Everything's changing in their life. Every aspect, even finding a new church, a barber or beautician, or, where the grocery store's at, the drugstore, the doctor. Right. I mean, you just go on, and
transition has a whole lot of pieces to it.
Yeah. So, but part of that, we partnered with marketplace chaplains, and we paid them extra for this service. Is that our coordinators that interacted with customers and even suppliers? Is that if let's take like a customer, if our coordinator picks up that these people are really stressed over their relocation, because psychologists say that this relocation, that change in their life, it's up there near like almost approaching death,
Wow.
So it's a serious thing.
Yeah.
But we partnered with them because they had chaplains, all over the whole country as well as some international. And that if it was okay with the customer, we would pay the cost of a chaplain in that city to go to that customer's home to minister to them.
Oh, wow.
At origin. And at destination, let's say their destination was, Miami, Florida or something.
Yeah.
Is that if they wanted it again, we would pay it was our ministry.
Wow.
We would pay the cost for that chaplain to go to that home and minister to them.
That's beautiful.
Now, the way we did with suppliers, let's say we're talking with the owner of that moving company and they're concerned because they got they got an employee in the hospital and they're real concerned about the employee. Well, our coordinators knew they had the authorization to commit our company, just like with the customer, to send a chaplain to that hospital to minister to that employee of that contractor, whatever city it was in.
I love it. Yeah.
I mean, if it was in Nashville, Tennessee, or Los Angeles or, wherever, Phoenix or wherever it was.
Yes.
And so that's some sampling on the marketplace. But if I can mention a couple more.
Go for it.
I started locally. It's called a Christian Business Leaders Forum, and it was a luncheon. And I was always surprised how many Christian business leaders attended.
Right.
And we kept the meal pretty low, but I paid for all the expense for guest speakers come from out of town and share about how to see your workplace as a ministry and things like that. And one of the favorites was Liberty Institute, and either Kelly Shackelford, who's the CEO and president, or either one of his other people would come and talk about. Because see, typically when I share these things that I'm sharing with you, the first question I always get, Bobby, is this even legal? and so. What they would cover is that, yes, it is legal.
Right.
And it's pretty amazing. We have the First Amendment of the Constitution. We have two major federal laws that we have a lot more freedom than most business leaders even know.
Yeah.
There is a couple of things that you can't do, but it's pretty simple. Is that, since we talked about Bible study, you cannot require an employee to attend a Bible study as a condition of their employment.
Right.
And I really wouldn't want to force somebody to be there anyway.
Right.
And so one of the others, it's identified as a, employment accommodation. If someone in their workstation wanted to hang a picture or two of Jesus and several crosses, the employer is required by law to accommodate that. And so outside of that, a business leader can do just about anything they want to do. They can spend their money on anything they want to do. They can participate in just about anything they want to do.
Yeah.
And so it's pretty simple stuff.
I love it. And now you are consulting other leaders. You talked about that somewhere in our conversation, but like right now you have, is it Values-Driven Leadership? I think is the name of the company. And you're actually helping small business owners, medium-sized, large corporations. You're helping business leaders to create values culture in their companies. Yes,
exactly. And before, if I might share one more thing on the marketplace.
Sure, go for
it. I'm trying to give, ideas.
I'm loving it.
Christian business is that we were involved in a lot of our industry trade association. I served on the board of our national trade association for many years. And was involved in the International Trade Association and also a few of the state association. Well, I worked with them to, when we would have a convention or a conference, I would work with the leadership of those organizations to put on what I call a Movers for Christ prayer breakfast.
Okay.
And they arranged for me to have a room and help me with the scheduling the date that didn't conflict with something else, and got me connected with how to to set the up, what the menu was going to be and how to pay for it and all that. Actually, it's kind of surprised me. A few of those trade association, they actually gave me all of the people's names and emails that registered. And one trade association actually included this Movers for Christ prayer breakfast in the registration fee.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I thought that's pretty bold.
Yeah, it is.
But I just wanted to share that one last thing, just to give people, all you got to do is, as a Christian business leader, is just open your eyes and look around you at things you're doing.
Yeah.
And it would really surprise you of what opportunities they might be.
Yeah. So many opportunities to share that, to show that you care.
Yes.
Yeah. Super good. I love it. Okay. So Bobby, this has actually been really good. I believe that just even those examples that you shared are sparking some wheels turning. It's of people who are going to really seek God around how I can show up and show that I care. And how do I create a culture that really allows me to just reveal the nature of Christ to the people around me and the people in my sphere of influence in this company. So I appreciate you so much for just sharing from your experience, and it's been super good. So share, how do people get connected with you, Bobby? And also share, I just asked about that before, but you actually you consult leaders in this area of developing culture and all of those things. So give a shout out in terms of what you do currently with business owners, and then tell people how they can get connected to you, please.
Okay. Thank you very much. You can get a hold of me. It's pretty simple. It's bobbyalbert.com. And that'll take you to my website. You can find all kinds of opportunities there. I do speaking and workshops and consulting. I have published 3 books, and so it's there's a lot of material. There's a 8-week online training course that's in there on life and leadership principles, and they're good for you for even just for your life, not because you got to lead yourself before you can even lead your family. So, but if I may offer is a free gift to your audience.
Go ahead.
And it's a link to a culture assessment, since we're talking about culture.
Yes.
I'm very interested in helping Christian business leaders to develop a culture where people thrive and profits soar. And it's a pretty simple link. It's bobbyalbert.com/ and it's considered one word in the link is culture checkup. Culture checkup? Yes, ma'am.
So bobbyalbert.com / culture checkup, all one word.
Yes. And what it
we'll
is,
link it up in the notes.
It doesn't take, I'll make sure and get it to you so you'll have that. There's 15 questions in there that will give you a flavor as to where your culture is today and how you might, the feedback you get is invaluable once you go through the questions, and it'll help you take you to where you could be.
Yes.
And I'd even suggest that you even have, your leadership team or some of the other employees even go through it, because it's always interesting the results that how other people think what's going on.
Right.
Because often it's for a lot of leaders, they're really shocked how their people think about their culture.
Right. Your assessment versus their assessment could look quite a bit different.
It could.
Yes. Oh, so that's super good. Bobby, thank you so much for your time today and sharing. I appreciate you. Great chat with Bobby Albert today. I have with me our CEO and my husband, Mr. Bynes. Phil, first of all, how are you?
I'm well.
Good. I didn't want to just hop in and not even ask you how you're doing, but I was just curious about just some of your reactions here. I really loved having this conversation with Bobby around kingdom culture and just how they were intentional about creating a kingdom culture in the workplace. For us at Kingdom Driven LLC, we're a business that happens to have everyone on the team is a believer. So there's a certain way that we can flow and function, but the large majority of kingdom driven entrepreneurs have businesses where it's not that all of their customers are going to be believers. All of their employees aren't necessarily believers and all of those. That's the most likely of scenarios for the business owner. And so I love the way he just gave examples around how he can express the heart of God, the ways of God, and create that kingdom environment, for everyone that he was touching. Not just, it was like employees, it was vendors, it was customers. It was like he was thinking about the entire ecosystem. I thought that was so good. So what were some of your thoughts, your reactions?
Yeah, I feel the same way. The one thing that stood out in the beginning is even before he came into the saving knowledge of Jesus Christ, he was already operating in servant leadership, right?
Yes.
And that's so powerful because it is a principle of the kingdom and it was working even before he received Jesus, right? The other thing that really stands out is like when you're creating a culture, you have to be intentional, and even if you don't know all the things that you want, as you begin to ponder and you're thinking about stuff with God and you're having your meetings with God, like he revealed that, he never misses his meetings. I think it's a weekly meeting, or is it daily? No, it's daily meetings, right? Daily meetings with God. And I'm pretty sure a lot of these culture ideals came out of his time meeting with God. So when we expose ourselves to the creator of the universe, he'll give us wisdom and things and ideals to help us to express what we desire to see in our businesses, in our culture.
Yeah. One of the things he said to me after we stopped the recording, one of the things he said to me was, I hope that people don't think that this is expensive. He says, will you please let them know that a lot of the things that we did not take massive investments, because he didn't want anyone to hear his story and then think, oh, well, I'll do those type, I'll create culture when I'm making X number of dollars because this is going to cost me this, or this is going to cost me that much. He didn't want anyone to operate out of that assumption. He's like, we were always operating with where we were, like what we had. And a lot of those things didn't cost a lot of money. Even if they sounded like they cost a lot of money, they didn't. But the bottom line is, remember, he's sharing what he did. He wasn't giving a blueprint. He was giving a framework. And it's like, if you just think about what this looks like for you, you can operate and steward from where you are and not be like, oh, I can't do that because X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, it's good because the king of the kingdom always meets us where we are, right? He's very personal. He knows exactly where we are. He always meets us where we are and expands from there. And so, yeah, it's true. Whatever resources you have, whatever desires you have, he will work within the framework of what you have and the desires that you have. And you can create something beautiful, as we saw from Bobby's story.
Yeah, super good. All right, you guys. Well, we will look forward to talking to you more on the next episode of the Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur Podcast. You all take care and God bless.
Thanks for joining us on the Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur Podcast. If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, we encourage you to subscribe and spread the word. And don't forget, you can gain access to even more resources, plus a thriving community of fire starters by visiting our website at kingdomdrivenentrepreneur.com.